Hello, ladies. Thank you for joining me for Lesson 3 in our Bible study video series called Finding Hope When Life's Not Fair. And we have been studying the book of Habakkuk, and today's lesson is entitled He's Still on the Throne. And we're going to look at Habakkuk chapter 2, verses 6 through 20. Now, Habakkuk has been wrestling with questions and with some things that he doesn't understand, that he thinks is not fair. And he's been talking to God about it. And then last week, we found out that he stopped and he waited and he listened for God's answer. And God has been answering him. And he's telling Habakkuk that he will take care of things and that he knows what's going on. And Habakkuk is asking these questions not just to get an answer, but just like when your kids ask you a question and they don't like your answer, they're wanting a change. They want something to happen. And in Habakkuk's questioning, he does want something to happen. He wants something to change. And what we're going to find out is it's Habakkuk's heart that's going to be changed, not really the situation. And in these verses today, we're going to study 5 different woes that God is going to talk about. They are 5 different sins, and these are things that He's not pleased with at all. And so often we get caught up with the here and now and the things of this earth and the things of this world, and we get our eyes here, and we are not thinking about eternal things. We're not thinking about eternity and what God puts value in. And when life doesn't seem fair, just like in this situation, and we're going to see that it can sometimes get really dark in this world, and we're seeing that right now in our world. And when it's the darkest is when hope shines the brightest, and when God, just the light of His Word, breaks through and pierces our heart if we let it. And the Babylonians here are very materialistic people that we're going to find out about today. And we're also going to see that I think they're very much like us. This was written thousands of years ago, but it is so relevant to us today. And throughout this, you'll hear the word him, but don't think it's talking about somebody else. It's talking about us. It can mean her also. And so we're going to dive into the scripture, and like I always say, don't just take my word for it. Let's study the scripture and let's see what God has to say about finding hope when life's not fair. Let's look at verse 6 in chapter 2. Shall not all these take up a parable against him and a taunting proverb against him and say, Woe to him that increaseth that which is not his. How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. Shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them? Because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein. Woe, first of all, is a condition of deep suffering. It is saying that there's misfortune, there's going to be affliction, there's going to be grief. It means there's going to be trouble. When you hear this word woe, it's just saying, it's not saying stop, it's saying bad things are coming to them. And so in this first woe we're going to see, it has to do with greed. So there's going to be trouble and there's going to be problems and ruin for the greedy. In today's world, I like to call this the bigger barn syndrome. I see people all the time. They have so much things, and me as well. We have so many things that we feel like we need a bigger storage room, or I need a bigger closet to put them. We need to add on to the house so we can fit everything in it that we have. It's the bigger barn syndrome. We have so much. We're so materialistic. And this is how the Babylonians were. The Babylonians would just raid all these lands, and they would pile up piles and piles of jewels and precious things and garments and whatever they could take from the people that they would take from. And if you notice here, it talks about the thick clay. In East Tennessee, where I grew up, when the ground gets wet, it makes this really thick red clay mud, and it will stick to your bare feet. And I know that because it happened to me many times as a kid. I'd be playing outside, and you'd have this thick red mud from my dad's garden that would be on my feet. And it can weigh you down when it got really thick on there, and it's a mess to get off. It's a sticky situation. And so God compares our overindulgent lifestyle to this thick clay that weighs you down, that can be hard to get rid of. And it's something that it actually makes me feel more clean when I clean out. When I clean out and I get rid of excess things, I feel lighter, I feel refreshed. And I think it's biblical for us to not be a hoarder and not to own so much stuff that it weighs us down. And so the Babylonians, they had lots of stolen goods that they plundered from helpless people. God also mentions the rivers of blood, and this is referring to all of the killing that the Babylonians did. And I said in our last week's lesson, they are gruesome people, and they killed and they plundered, and that was how they built their city. Let's look at verses 9, 10, and 11 and look at the next woe. Woe to him that coveteth an evil covetousness to his house, that he may set his nest on high, that he may be delivered from the power of evil. Thou hast consulted shame to thy house by cutting off many people, and hast sinned against thy soul. For the stone shall cry out of the wall, and the beam out of the timber shall answer it. So this next woe is for coveting. This is talking about people who are discontent. They're always desiring something else. And many women think that contentment will come from buying that one more thing. That's why there's so much advertisement. And it's right there in our face all the time. And I found that this doesn't always mean that it's just one more material thing. I find nowadays, I talk to many ladies who covet other things. They covet somebody else's family. They covet somebody else's home. They covet someone else's husband. They covet someone else's children, someone else's job, someone else's situation. And all along, what we need to be doing is following the guidelines of this verse in Mark chapter 8, verse 36. It says, "What profiteth a man if he gains the whole world, yet loses his own soul?" Real riches are not found in the things on this earth, and they're not found in somebody else's yard either. Real riches are found in spiritual things, and that's what we should be coveting. We should be coveting a closer walk with God. Let's look at verses 12, 13, and 14, and let's look at the next woe. Woe to him that buildeth a town with blood, and establisheth a city by iniquity. Behold, is it not of the Lord of hosts that the people shall labor in the very fire, and the people shall weary themselves for very vanity? For the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. The next woe is concerning the exploitation and abuse of people. Babylon was built on bloodshed, and this city was magnificent in its day. Huge walls, huge gates and buildings, and they had all kinds of the latest things that they could have in that day, and all of it was built by harming people and on slavery. And sadly today, we have abuse and exploitation in the world that we live in. No, we may not see a city built on it, but we see businesses built on it through pornography. We see firsthand when I was growing up, my parents kept foster children, and most of them had come from an abusive situation. And I didn't understand. I was a kid myself, and I didn't understand why did they behave like they did. Sometimes they would do some of the weirdest things, I thought. And it was from living in abusive homes and coming from abusive families. And today, it's still going on. I see it around me. Sometimes somebody may not be able to say it. You may can see it on their face, or you can kind of guess about their situation. And I want to encourage you, keep your eyes open and don't just close them to something because you don't want to make it your business. And just be careful about that. It's heartbreaking that abuse happens in our world, and we need to look out for signs from people who are reaching out to us. There's a lot of abuse in other countries. We don't realize it when we live here in America unless you have been somewhere else and lived that way. We can't even fathom what it's like as a woman to live in some of these third world countries and how they are treated. I read this quote this week. The treatment of women can be seen as a barometer of a nation's relationship with God. And we see that the more that they don't know God, the more heathenistic that the people will behave, especially towards women. And yes, Babylon might have been glorious in its day with all of its things, humanly speaking, but its glory was destroyed. And God says here in this passage that His glory will cover the world and it will last forever. Anything built by man will not last. Only what God builds will last. Let's look at the next woe. Let's look at 15 through 18. Woe unto him that giveth his neighbor drink, that puttest thy bottle to him, and makest him drunken also, that thou mayest look on their nakedness. Thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory. For the violence of Lebanon shall cover thee, and the spoil of beasts which made them afraid, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land of the city, and of all that dwell therein. What profiteth the graven image that the maker thereof hath graven it, the molten image and the teacher of lies, that the maker of his work trusteth therein to make dumb idols? And a lot of this passage here has to do with the future, has to do with prophecy. But this next woe, that woe right here specifically is saying woe about drunkenness and violence. The Bible warns against the evils of strong drink, of alcohol many times. Drunkenness and sensual behavior always go hand in hand. The picture here is of Babylon taking advantage of other nations. It's also a picture of Babylon looking like a repulsive drunk who is actually vomiting all over himself. And one day, God's glory will shine and Babylon will be shamed, just like this drunken person who is vomiting on themselves. And it's interesting that God mentions the way that the Babylonians abused trees and animals also. The soldiers would waste trees, they would cut things down, and they would kill cattle for the war reasons. And these verses made me think about the Middle East and what's happening over there. And it's sickening to think of the violence to the women, the children, and the Christians that's happening right now. And our hope is that we know God will avenge one day. And let's look at verse 19. Woe unto him that saith to the wood, awake to the dumb stone, arise, it shall teach. Behold, it is laid over with gold and silver, and there is no breath at all in the midst of it. So here's our last woe, and this is woe unto idolatry. Now they worshipped wood, stone, gold, and silver, it said in this verse, and many more things, but those were what was mentioned. And when I think of these idols, I can't help but think of the things that people worship today. Homes, cars, money, fame. None of these things have life in them. These are dead gods. Anything you have that you cannot give away, you don't really own. It owns you. And I think about something that people are really attached to these days, and that is their phone. And I feel like their phones have become their idol. They own us. If you've lost your phone, you know right away you'll go run and try to find it. I know I do the same thing. You'll be in a panic. Where is my phone? Everything I have is on that phone. And I see that there has been a great connection in the last 10 years. I've just seen it in the ministry with young people, how they are so, and not just young people, but I'm seeing it in young people, how they are so dependent on that phone, and also how I've seen a rise of anxiety, depression, and suicide. These things have risen along with the attachment to the cell phone. And along with that cell phone, it's not just the phone, it's what's on it. And I think a big part of it has been the social media. The social media feeds the ego for them. It fosters a frantic kind of mentality, and it distracts us from being present with those who you love. Let's look at verse 20. But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. So God ends this passage with great assurance. Although these terrible things are going on in the world around us, just like today we have terrible things going on, let's not forget that he is holy. And no matter our questions, God is in control. And it says the world will be quiet in reverence to him. And when I read this, I couldn't help but think, in the verse when it said the Lord is in his holy temple, I thought about the lyrics to the Kyla Rowland song, He's Still on the Throne. And when the choir sang it, the last time we sang it, the words just really spoke to me. I've heard the song for years because it came out when I was a teenager. But the words were fresh to me again the last time we sang it. And I want to quote just the chorus to you. He's still on the throne, so what could be wrong? It's well with my soul. Let the stormy winds blow. I'm reminded today, thank God I am saved. Salvation's sweet song while ages roll on. He's still on the throne. So what can we take away from these woes today? Let's go back to talking about Habakkuk's heart, like I was talking about at the beginning. He had waited. He had listened to God's answers. And the fears of the world were screaming in his face all around him, just like they are in ours today. And Habakkuk cries out to God. And there's nothing wrong with us crying out to God. And he pours out his questions and his heart to God. And God assures Habakkuk that he will avenge the Babylonians and everything will be made right in his time. But for now, God tells Habakkuk to be quiet. That's what that last verse said. And be quiet. I'm still on the throne. He's in his holy temple. And we need to be still and we need to be quiet. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I don't understand, things that I don't think are fair. Just today, I've received news that I don't understand. I don't know why God's allowing this to happen. It doesn't seem fair to me. But all I can do is trust that God's still on his throne and he knows what's best for us. And that's all we can do is trust him and read his word and stay in it. So when life's not fair, remember, ladies, God is still on the throne. So let's look next week and find out what Habakkuk does as a result of God's answers. I hope you ladies have a great week, and I hope that you keep your heart in tune. Thank you for joining me for this lesson, and we'll see you next time.